Hey there, fellow pwners. Welcome to MasterofPwnage's Art of Little War. Today we're talking about Alexander the Great. So we're going to start off by going over his abilities, and we're going to break them down a little bit and talk about them. Next, we're going to talk about what units he's really good with and what units you should always try to use. Then we're going to talk about what units you should try to avoid and why. And then we're going to work on unit configurations and what I recommend, especially for beginners to start with, for offense, defenses, or taking alternative routes. So taking like side routes, going a way that people don't normally go. So you might be alone and you would want to take those builds. So let's go ahead and get started. Alright, so Alexander's first ability is Hammer. So what Hammer does is it increases your acceleration, your speed, and a charge bonus. And the important note here is it works on both melee infantry and melee cavalry. So both melee cavalry and infantry units will have this ability when you are using Alexander with him. So that's one thing, but the important one is Anvil. These really go together, guys. Hammer and Anvil, Anvil and Hammer. So Anvil, what it does is you have to target an enemy, so you have to be in melee, target the enemy, and then trigger Anvil. And what happens is they now have a minus 50% charge deflect. They can't move and they're unorderable for 12 seconds. And every level of this decreases the cooldown, and not much more than that. So what you're going to want to do, get into melee with one unit, have another unit going onto their flank, and then trigger Hammer on your second unit right after you trigger Anvil. Remember, you only have 12 seconds, so you're going to have to time it pretty well. The next one is Rapid Advance. Rapid Advance is a very useful skill. And we'll get into more of this later because that really impacts what I use as the unit breakdown and what units you should use with it and what units you should stay away from. Keep in mind, this works for all units. So any unit you attach to them is able to use Rapid Advance. Wedge. Now, Wedge, I've heard so many people complain about Wedge saying it's completely useless. Wrong. Wedge only works with melee cavalry, and what it does is it increases your charge impact and your charge bonus, but negatively affects your ability to defend yourself. So what you want to do with Wedge is slam into the enemy, and either turn it off and maintain contact if you're trying to hold them there, or what you should do with cavalry, slam into them, turn it off, and then run away. That's what I do. And that's what everybody that's effective with Wedge does. So that's how you use it. Alright, so now let's talk about what units you should be using with Alexander the Great. Now, I highly recommend using pikemen. And I have a very specific reason for that. And we will get into that in a little bit here. Melee cavalry for the use of Wedge and Hammer. And javelin men. So javelin men, I say this because of Rapid Advance. Rapid Advance is very useful for all units, but especially javelin men. Javelin have the highest damage output of all ranged weapons, but they're not able to throw as far as all the other ranged weapons. So you can counter that by using Rapid Advance to your advantage. You're going to want to go hit the enemy. You want to skirmish by falling back, and as soon as they actually get close enough to do damage, slam onto that Rapid Advance and fall back for the entire 30 seconds, and then turn around and repeat the process. You're almost guaranteed to kill the unit that's chasing you with one trigger of Rapid Advance. So, now that we know what units you should be using, that's pikemen, melee, cavalry, and javelin men, you're going to want to avoid the use of spearmen. Now, I know I'm going to get some flack for saying that. The reason I say you should avoid using spearmen is because they are better used by other commanders. Leonidas, exponentially better with spearmen than you are. How do you defeat a Leonidas if you go up against him and you have spearmen with Alexander? You can't. You're going to lose. It's a guarantee. If you go up against Scorpio Africanus and he has spearmen versus your spearmen, you're going to lose. You don't want to take out spearmen with Alexander the Great, guys. So stick to the pikemen. Just use them right. Ranged cavalry, for obvious reasons, guys. You're not going to get any buffs besides the rapid advance and rapid advance or isn't really useful for ranged cavalry. Ranged cavalry are already the fastest units in the game. No reason to have to increase that at all. It's a waste of a slot. Archers. Now, archers is the same reason as spearmen. There is one particular person who is exponentially, and I mean exponentially better with archers, and that's Kaina. So if you want to use archers, use Kaina. And siege weapons, guys. Now, the reason I say don't use siege weapons is because when you're using Alexander the Great's abilities and you're playing him properly, you're having to do a lot of micromanagement, and you're not going to really have time to properly utilize your artillery. So it's just a wasted slot. Add in a cavalry, add in a javelinman, add in a pikeman. Just don't waste it on artillery. It's just not useful for you. So what are my recommended configurations? I highly recommend a pikeman cavalry config with your pikeman as one of your first units. So if you don't know this, your first unit is where your commander is. You're going to want, because your pikemen are much more likely to stay alive than your cavalry is. Cavalry is pretty weak as far as if it gets hit by something. So you're going to want it to be inside of one of your pikemen here. Your commander, that is. And I recommend Pike Cab configuration for defensive roles, guys. Pikemen are very, very good at defense. So if you want a defense role, use Pike Cab. Next up is Pike Cab Cab. Now, it seems very similar, I know, but Pike Cab Cab, it allows you to be very offensive. What you're going to want to do is use your pikemen to trigger into a melee. Make sure that you have your pikes down when you initiate. Then you hit anvil, lift up those pikes, and then slam into them with your horses. Micromanagement to the max, guys, I know, but if you do it, you will completely decimate their unit, especially while in wedge formation. The last one, this is for if you're taking alternative routes or you're not playing with a team, so you might need to be self-sustaining. Pike Jab Cab. So one pikeman as your commander unit, a javelinman, and a cavalry unit. This is a very versatile unit. You can play defense with it. You can stick your pikemen in the front, get into a melee, use the jab from an angle, from a flank, and pummel them from the side, all the way up to your cavalry have come all the way around and slammed into the back of them. You could pretty much, with that setup, you can melt 1, 2, or possibly even 3 units almost instantly before you start really taking a lot of casualties. Well, there you have it, guys. Alexander the Great. I hope you guys all learned something. And if you enjoyed the video, please subscribe above. Make sure you're the first to know about newest videos. To all my vapors out there, make sure you stop by vapetrip.com. Type in MasterofPwnage at checkout for 20% off your purchase. Till next time, guys, pwn on.